A question I get asked all the time. That's a lie. No one's ever asked me this. But a question that I've wanted to answer as if someone has asked it is the question of, well, what vacuums do you use? Because, I mean, after all, it's not exactly like I have a shortage of options to choose from, right? I mean, theoretically, I could use many different vacuums of all sorts of shapes and all kinds of sizes. So if I put my hard-earned money towards an actual vacuum, then I mean, it must be good, right? There's just, a lot of things that go into choosing an appliance to actually use. Some of it, after all, is convenience. Sometimes it's raw performance. Sometimes it's noise. Sometimes it's weight. Sometimes it's the combination of all three. And a lot of times, it's not necessarily job agnostic. So if I'm using something for a specific task, I might be more incentivized, for example, to use a machine that's more affordable. In a case where it's vacuuming up things that could potentially damage it that it's not really designed for, so that way if something catastrophically fails, I'm less likely to be out any substantial amount of currency. And there's always the secondary question that sort of tags along to that question, which is, well, I mean, I am a vacuum review channel, not a very good one, but I'm theoretically a vacuum review channel, so the question is, what am I reviewing? Because after all, if I'm reviewing something, that's going to be what I'm using at that point in time. So of course, the machine that I'm currently testing is going to be the first answer to that question. And while the review might not necessarily be anytime soon, the exact machine I'm currently testing, yet again, is the Musu U1400. But the main upright vacuum at this exact point in time that I'm currently using, as of the snapshot of the time that I filmed this video, the vacuum that's even currently plugged in is the Cibo Dart. Now, there's many other machines that I've been using, and specifically corded uprights that I've been using and ping-ponging between. I don't have them all downstairs because just this year I've gone through a number of machines that I've used for several weeks at a time. This includes the Canister SL4110A, the Iona Phantom Fury, and a few other machines in between. The Dyson DC14, All Floors, the Dyson DC07 Pink, the Dyson DC04 Absolute Plus, and the Dyson Ball Animal 2, to name the Dysons. There's also other machines that I've used this year, like the Eureka Whirlwind Lightspeed and the Bissell Powerforce 3525 model. And of course, there's plenty of other machines as well that have gotten used recently prior to this year, and there's just frankly too many to list. But the ones that I've most commonly been pulling out and using over the last couple years, which is how I'm going to use this cutoff, is the aforementioned Sanitaire SL4110A and Phantom Fury. Also, usually some type of Dyson mixed in there, depending on what model I'm feeling at that exact moment. They all kind of drive very close to each other, so there's going to be a little bit of overlap there. But the one that I've used the most in a extended period of time, the most recently, was the Dyson Ball Animal 2. That I used for about 2 months towards the tail end of last year, even though I do have the Animal 3. And on the topic of Dyson, I've been using 2 stick vacs recently for 2 different tasks. The main stick vac I've been using is my Dyson V8 Absolute. Now I do also have the Dyson V11 torque drive, and I have been using that a little bit, but I kind of retired it now. There was a brief time where I was using it and relatively happy with it, but at the end of the day, the V8 is really all I need for the type of stuff that I'm using it for. The V11 does get a lot closer to being able to replace a corded vacuum in my home. Still doesn't quite get there, but it does bridge the gap a bit more, but in exchange you get a lot of extra weight and a bit more of a complex design that's more likely to potentially fail. So the more simple V8 is generally my favorite Dyson. This is the Absolute model. I got it at around the same time that I got my Dyson Ball Animal 3, and I've ran this almost exclusively on the normal mode, just for disclaimer, and I've ran both the heads. I've ran this thing many times, and I try to practice good habits to keep the battery in good shape. Once in a while, I'll unplug the charging dock so that way I can drain the battery down to 0 to recalibrate it, and so far, it's been giving me no issues whatsoever. Now, obviously, if you run this thing on max, the battery is likely to prematurely fail, but I've been doing everything I can to make sure that it doesn't fail, especially considering I'm coming up on the end of my 2-year warranty on this. So, this has been my go-to stick vac, And at some point soon, I do plan on doing a updated review on this once I've had it for about 2 years, just to do a super long-term review, since this is the most commonly used machine, at least the second most commonly used machine, as it's in a spot where there aren't any other real stick vacs to take its place. I did just pick up a Tinico, but I haven't used it. And like I said, I used the V11 for a brief time, but this is what's actually mounted on my wall. So it's the one that gets the permanent spot for the stick vac. Now, when I want a cordless stick vac, but I want to use it for something that I don't want to risk getting this in a position where it sucks up something nasty, like for example, vacuuming up cat litter, that's where I use my Canister H8. Which it's kind of funny because there's this Dyson that I paid for, not necessarily full price, I got it on sale, but, actually bought it new. And there's this Honiture, which came from, well, the company, and they were the first ever company to send me a vacuum for free for review, which I greatly appreciate. Unfortunately, this model's not available anymore, and in the time that I moved, I lost a lot of the attachments, I lost the bracket, and I lost the charger, so I had to overpay for one on eBay. Although I'm sure I could have found a cheaper one elsewhere, but nevertheless I did. And this thing has been rock solid. It's almost dead right now, but it still runs just as great as it did whenever I first got it. And I have not been nice to this thing. I've been using this for a lot of stuff. Still has original filters in it, and they've been holding up just fine. I do like the more simple cyclone setup on this, because even though this is vacuumed up way smellier materials, it's vacuumed up cat litter and all sorts of that sort of thing, this actually does not smell like anything, whereas this has developed a pretty nasty funk coming from both the filter and the cyclone pack, which that I'm not quite happy about. Maybe at some point if I get an air compressor, I'm hoping to maybe be able to blow that out and not have to take this apart, because I really don't want to. But this new filter design has done its job at mostly staying clean. I've washed this about twice, and yeah, it's got a bit of a smell to it, so I do need to wash it again. But I can also tell that the smell is coming from the cyclones as well, because I can smell it even without the filter in place. So there is definitely some buildup at this point, and the buildup is way more noticeable on this than it is on the full-size Dyson uprights. So I don't usually get a smell with the Dyson Cyclones on my Dyson uprights, but on this I absolutely do. So that's something that's going to be a little bit annoying to address, but nevertheless I have been using it. For what it's worth, the HEPA filter still smells great and does a solid job at filtering. So I don't have any real complaints with this. I've even dropped it a couple times, because there's a couple times that I've dropped both this and my V11, and while I've heard a lot of reports of cracked cyclones, other than a couple little scrapes, nothing too major. So this thing has stood the test of time, and it continues to be my daily stick vac, along with the Honiture for tougher yet more remedial tasks. So the stick vacs that I've been using have been pretty consistent for quite a while. But I'd say the number one machine that I've used the most is also a used find. It's a machine you can still currently get, but this is an older model of it, and that's the Eureka Mighty Mite. Now, out of all my canisters, this one has gotten the most use. I do also have the Bissell Zing, which complements it. Hi, Rocco. But the Mighty Mite has gotten the most amount of usage. This thing has been... This thing has been through hell and back, and it's been beat. It's not literally. I don't obviously abuse... Hi, Rocco. I obviously don't abuse my vacuums, but this has had a lot of usage. It's had a lot of time put into it as far as, filling it, using it. It's been my bench vac for the longest of time, so this is the vacuum that I go to clean out other machines that are dirty or whatever the case may be. So this has been the vacuum dedicated to that task. Not only that, but it's also cleaned my car a few times. It's cleaned my bare floors a few times when I want something more simple than a soft roller, and it's been an absolute powerhouse. It's been great. I have zero complaints with it. I've been way too lazy, and I still need to fit a HEPA filter to it, because this thing sucked up a lot of plaster dust as well. It's done even some DIY work and essentially replaced a shop vac, which I don't recommend, but it's done that, and it still runs just fine. And the bags, despite them being relatively small, you can pack them very tightly. I've had this thing for a long time, and I've replaced the bag maybe twice in the time that I've been using it for the last couple years at this point. So the bag capacity on this has been really solid as well. So that, sir, what are you doing? Rocco's rubbing up on the camera, but this thing has been absolutely wonderful. And of course it's 1.25 inches as well, so I can use a bunch of attachments on it. I've used Dyson attachments and other 1.25 inch attachments, and it's been just fine as well. And I haven't even ran any HEPA bags in it yet. I've only been running paper, and it's been pretty decent. Haven't really had any issues with that. Apparently we have a forced cat intermission. Ow! Ow, sir! Your beans are spicy. Don't scratch me. How dare you? Okay, apparently we have a cat intermission. Not decided me, but decided by the council. No. No. No, 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 no. Your beans are spicy. No. No. Let me see those teeth. Let me see those teeth. Teeth. No teeth. Ow. No. No. Bonk. 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 Apparently, this is the scheduled cat intermission. No. What? Anyways, so if we take a look at this, we can kind of get a look and see what this looks like. So I forgot what bags are in here, but apparently they have a sealing mechanism. Whatever. Are these EnviroCare? I honestly can't remember. But yeah, this bag is actually, it's kind of funny I mentioned not changing the bag, because this bag is getting pretty full. Although this part hasn't really pulled out properly, so I might be able to get some more life out of that. But that's the filter. There's some dust in the chamber, but it's like, what, there's one or two pieces of hair and then some stuff on it. I probably should clean that, to be fair. But like, I haven't cleaned that the entire time that I've ran this, and it's been pretty solid. I'm going to try seeing if I can kind of fluff out the bottom part of this bag. Okay, so these bags are Crucial branded, apparently. So yeah, I mean, this bag, I might be able to stress a little bit more into it, because this part's got a bit more squish. So I might be able to stretch this a little bit further, but, you know, realistically, I probably should change it. But this is even going to go back in. Yeah, actually, yeah, maybe this is time to be changed. But I'll deal with that later. But regardless, this thing has easily been my #1 most used vacuum, just for the simple fact that even though I don't obviously clean a vacuum every day, this thing has had the longest time of consistent usage in my household. I've been using this for its task for about 2 years straight, which says a lot about this. Yeah, sure, it's a basic canister, so the wheels kind of suck, and this handle's fine. I mean, there's nothing really wrong with it. But, you know, it serves its purpose, and that's the main thing, is it serves its purpose. A very similar story to the stickbacks. They serve their purpose. So you kind of notice a bit of a theme where my bench vac and then my, you know, sort of quick pickup vacs don't tend to change a whole lot. But my daily driver uprights, which the term daily driver is kind of misleading because technically these are the daily drivers, this is the daily driver, these are the twice a week driver more so, and these shuffle all the time. So, like I mentioned, there's so many machines that I've used. In times I've used, Maytag wind tunnels, I've used various Dysons, various Elites, I've used a few different Bissels, the Miele U1, and just many machines like that. Other SIBOs, like the other two SIBOs I have. So that all just kind of shifts and changes. So, and as much as the Phantom Fury theoretically shouldn't be in the rotation because of how old it is, how there's no parts available. I mean, these two are currently produced machines, and even though this is an older model, this one's also a currently produced machine. The Fury is not. And the Animal 2 is a currently produced machine. The U1 isn't, but you can get parts for it still. The Fury is very much not. But I just keep using it because it's legitimately my favorite vacuum of all time. And I've had a lot of people ask that too, although that will get its separate video to go more into detail. But there's just many reasons. It reminds me a lot of a Dyson, but it has a much more straightforward design. I've worked on a lot of these now, and I really enjoy working on them, except for the actual valve in the motor, or in the motor cavity, or motor housing, I guess. For some reason I was struggling to find the word for housing. And, the fact that you can still get belts and light bulbs for it, and old stock filters on eBay. Brush rolls are a bit harder, but everything else is at least findable. I've still been using it. I mean, I'm extremely careful with it. I move it very gently and very slowly. I vacuum very slowly with it, which also means it cleans really well as well, because it just has a good design. There's obviously some quirks with it. There's obviously some things that are bad about it. It leaks a lot of fine dust through the motor. This whole base assembly is known to warp. There's a couple other issues with Phantoms, of course. Cord clips like to break off, that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, it's, what is the point of having a collectible machine that you want for a reason if you never use it? So there are definitely some collectors that enjoy having things just for the sake of having them. And there are machines that I have that are like that. But this, and I have multiples of these Furies. This one is basically in the middle in terms of condition. It's very scratched up, but it has full functionality. There's no broken pieces or anything. So it's that nice balance where I can use it, and it's not broken already, so I'm not worried about more parts falling off, but it's also not in a position where it's so nice that I don't want to use it. It's a nice little middle ground. So I've been using this one. This one's a 2000 model as well. So this one's one of the later ones. This one's the 8th week of 2000. Very, very early in 2000. Scored a good amount of NOS filters on eBay. Although this one I ran in one of my other Furies that is in very bad shape and is blowing a lot of bad stuff out of the motor. So the filter looks artificially discolored, but if you actually look inside the chassis, there's not really anything in there. So, but yeah. And it still smells new as well, which is important. So yeah, and then of course there's, I'll also touch on the other machine. The Dart, I think, doesn't really need a whole lot of introduction, especially if you're familiar with vacuums. But the Sanitaire, now the machine I'm currently using at work, I mean, technically speaking, my boss has said this. He's like, you don't have to bring a vacuum to work. We have one here. In fact, I even fixed it for him. But that Hoover Wind Tunnel XL PET, the Black Friday special, doesn't play very nicely with the very thin commercial pile carpeting we have at our building. So I took the initiative to bring my Bissell Big Green Commercial over there. So if you haven't seen that in a while, that's why. It lives there pretty much full time, and I use it to vacuum the store all the time. With, of course, the Clean Fairy Style 7 HEPA bags that I recommended a million times. Although right now, once I use this again, I plan on testing out the Febreze bags again just to see how well those are. It's been a while since I've used them. But of course, this machine is always at the top of my recommended list. because it's a lightweight machine that cleans well. You can get parts for them, especially the Big Green more so. And it's just that Bissell style that I really like. It's a lightweight, basic upright that's bagged with very affordable bags, very affordable belts and expendables, very affordable to run. And yet, despite its relatively cheap, rudimentary design that a lot of people think is junk, if you take care of it, it'll last 20 years. And, that's something that I'll argue until the end of time, because it's true. You don't need a Sebo Dart to have a machine that lasts 20 years. If you're willing to change the belts, change the bags, clean the brush roll, replace the brush roll maybe at worst every 5 or 6 years, worst case scenario, then, that's still really good. $145. Actually, the Big Green is better than this, just objectively, but I like the color scheme on this. This is what I use at home, and it's the more fragile of the two machines, this and the Big Green. So again, that's why I use this one at home and use the Big Green at work. Although if I had to pick one, the Big Green's obviously better, and it's also cheaper on Amazon. So I recommend those all the time. But the main reason why they don't get all the usage is because the lack of real length from the hose. That's where the Phantoms and the Dysons come in. And I have the same complaint about the Sebo Dart. The hose is just too short on both of these, which is why they're not my only machine that stays in my rotation. Generally, I'll have 2 or 3 machines downstairs that I'm using at any given time and alternating between those 3. I never really use the same machine for a while. The only exception for that, at least the most recent exception to that, has been the Dyson Ball Animal 2. Because while I prefer bagged to bagless machines, bagged machines with the amount of reach of a Phantom or a Dyson, with the ability to leave it at the bottom of the stairs and go all the way up, and with the ability to get up into corners and stuff without moving the machine or adding any accessories, that's just something that a lot of bag machines just haven't tackled yet, except the Miele U1. And the Miele U1, while I absolutely adore that machine, it's very heavy and it's a very convoluted, cumbersome design that I'm just not really a fan of daily driving because there's just too much weight. If there was a lighter weight model of that, I'd be all over it, but it's not even in production anymore anyways. So that's kind of an issue. So a little bit of rationale as to why I've been using the machines that I have been, and overall what machines I generally tend to use and why. Like I said, I gravitate towards bag machines, but versatility is the number one thing that I tend to look for in a machine, which is why I tend to gravitate a lot towards Dyson, even though I don't necessarily like their practices as a company at this point in time. And also, I know how to take care of my machines. So even though Dysons aren't the most durable machines in the world, they're at least durable enough that I know how to take care of them and keep them from breaking, with the exception of the odd fluke here and there. So, in fact, I have a DC-41 that I was also using. In fact, it's right there, that I have been using for a while, both at work and at home. And that thing has been through hell, and it's still chugging. So, for what it's worth, all of my machines have been very well as far as condition, and I haven't really had any issues with any machines breaking down. Although it is worth noting that I'm honestly going to not have the same perspective as a buyer who buys one vacuum and uses it every day as their only machine for many, many years on end. There obviously is some context missing there. So that is pretty much a rundown of a lot of the machines that I use every day or throughout my cleaning routine. Like I said, there are also some other machines that kind of tend to fluctuate in and out. I still have not really integrated a shop vac into my routine just because I haven't really done much with that sort of thing. I've elected to just use the domestic machines that are on their way out anyways. Like, for example, that Bissell Power Force Helix that has a really bad sounding motor now. That machine is the type of machine that I would use for a lot of more extraneous jobs where if the thing blows up and falls apart, there's not much lost. If it's a machine that I'd be too embarrassed to sell to a customer, but also works good enough that I can't justify throwing it away, a lot of machines that are newer that aren't collectible with that designation will often get relegated to basement service, garage service, sometimes even car cleaning service. So, a lot of stuff does not go to waste. And the basement is full of many parts machines, that you rarely ever see because I'm just holding on to them in case I get a new machine to rebuild. So, in case you're wondering what happens with those types of machines, they do often end up in the rotation, at least with some asterisks. I'm not the type of person to want to throw away machines. I'm the last person you're going to see throwing away something if I can help it. And I'm also not going to make posts bragging about all the stuff that I'm throwing away like some other people. I will try to use it if at all possible. That's just the type of person I am. One of these days, when I get the basement more cleaned up and presentable, I may do a tour of all the machines that are in the basement, but right now that's not really a priority. But anyways, let me know what machines you guys use all the time in your house for each purpose, and also what few you've been cycling through, if applicable. I love hearing from you guys in the comments, and let me know your thoughts on how stupid you think I am for daily driving a Fury, or picking a cheap Bissell when I have a Cibo X7, a Miele U1, and had a Lindhaus. I'm sure there's plenty of people that'll give me an earful for still using these basic cheap machines, but at the end of the day, if I'm being honest, and I'm sure some can relate to this, when you spend a lot of time fixing Dysons and fixing Cibos and all that crap, and trying to, which to be fair, I don't work at a store, so my volume isn't as much as somebody else, but when you spend time working on those, the last thing you really want to do is worry about rebuilding your own personal machine. And something like this never needs that. Even the Phantom generally doesn't. When I daily drive it, sure, it's probably good practice to open the thing up every 3 years and wipe down and blow out the motor to make sure that dust isn't clogging it up and causing the carbons to slip. But other than that, that type of stuff is usually the what I do, because just the type of machines that I don't like to worry about. The stuff with the machines with computers and complex relays and stuff in them, they're cool, but generally speaking, they're not going to be the type of machine I'm going to use long term, because that's another ingress point of failure, and that's just not something I'm interested in. At the end of the day, this will last longer if taken care of than a machine with a computer in it. And that even includes an X Series Cibo. I'm not kidding. But yeah, so, anyways, regardless of that controversy aside, because I know some people are going to find that controversial, and that will get its own separate video as well, so I can explain that in depth. That cheap vacuums, in fact, can last a long time. But anyways, this is Intelitech Studios signing out, recapping all the not all the machines obviously, but a good chunk of the machines that I tend to use as daily drivers, what I've been using, why I've chosen those machines. I think I explained that pretty well. And overall, did I ever explain why I used the Mighty Might over my Bissell Zing? I think the main reason is just no cord rewind, and I had a crap ton of bags for it. I think that's the main reason. But yeah. So I think that covers everything. So anyways, this is Intelitech Studios signing out. I'll see you guys in the next video, and I hope you all have a good one. Peace.